It was supposed to be just another night in Hollywood: lights, laughter, and the usual glitz. A slick, late-night talk show. Cheers erupted as Denzel Washington strode onto the stage. Suave, steady, that signature calm radiating like armor. The host grinned ear to ear. The band played him in, and the crowd buzzed like electricity in the air. But there was something off. Behind the actor's warm smile, behind the polished charm and gracious chuckles, there was a flicker in his eyes. Pause too long. A gaze that drifted, as if his spirit hadn't quite followed him to the stage. And then it happened. Halfway through the show, the host leaned in with a mischievous smirk. "We've got a little surprise for you tonight, Denzel." Someone calling in from very far away. Denzel arched an eyebrow. What kind of surprise are we talking about? The studio lights dimmed. The screen behind him flickered to life. Blue, white, red. Gasps. Confusion. A ripple of murmurs. A flag appeared. Burkina Faso. Then a voice. Measured. Commanding. Soft yet echoing with gravity. "Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition of Burkina Faso." The room froze. Time slowed. You could hear the air conditioning humming, the faintest rustle of someone shifting in their seat. Denzel didn't move. He stared at the screen, lips slightly parted, as if his soul had just been summoned. "You don't know me, Mr. Washington," the president continued, his voice laced with warmth and steel. "But when I was 14, a barefoot boy in my village, I saw you in glory." The audience leaned in. The host's face had gone blank. "I saw a black man," Ibrahim said, "who did not beg, who did not flinch, who cried for justice, and stood for it." Denzel's eyes blinked. Too fast, too often. He looked away, swallowed. "That night," Ibrahim said, "I told my mother, one day, I will fight for people too, like him." Laughter was gone. Jokes forgotten. The crowd sat silent, stunned. The host whispered off mic, "Holy." "Years later," the president continued, "when my country called for someone to stand, I remembered you, your courage, your rage, your dignity." Denzel's hand was now covering his mouth. His shoulders were shaking barely, but visibly. "You're telling me," he croaked, voice trembling, "I helped shape a president." There was a pause. The screen flickered with static. Then, "No, sir," said Ibrahim. "You shaped a man who refused to kneel before injustice." A gasp rippled through the room. One tear rolled down Denzel's cheek. Just one. But it said everything. "Thank you, my brother," he whispered. But the call wasn't over. What came next sent a jolt through the studio and through the world. Ibrahim's voice deepened. Steadier. It was no longer a tribute. It was a declaration. "Today, I speak not just as a leader, but as someone who owes a debt. And in my country, when a man saves your soul, we do not forget." Denzel shook his head, stunned. "Please no, I didn't do anything. Mr. Washington," Traoré interrupted gently. "I am inviting you officially to Ouagadougou, not just to be honored. I want to name a leadership school after you." Another gasp. Someone in the audience yelled, "Oh my God!" Applause broke out, but soft, almost reverent. "A place," the president said, "where our children will learn to walk tall, just as I did. Watching you." The host had his hand over his heart. "Denzel?" He looked like he couldn't breathe. "Mr. President," his voice cracked, "I don't deserve that." A pause. Then a smile from the screen. "That," said Traoré, "is exactly why you do." And just like that, the call ended. The screen went black. The studio fell into the kind of silence only truth can create. Denzel Washington bowed his head. His hands covered his face. And he cried, the raw, wordless kind of cry that makes even strangers ache for you. Not out of sadness, but because a life's work, a film, a scene, a moment had crossed oceans, changed a child, forged a leader, and now was calling him home. But this was not the end. No, it was the spark. Because within 24 hours, Denzel would be packing his bags. And what was waiting for him in Burkina Faso would send aftershocks around the globe. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat with Ibrahim's words playing on a loop in his head. By morning, social media was on fire. Hashtag Denzel was trending in over 20 countries. Tweets from activists, heads of state, teary fans. Journalists calling it the most powerful moment ever seen on live television. And Denzel? He was already preparing for the journey that would become bigger than cinema, bigger than Hollywood. The journey that would test not the actor, but the man behind the name. While headlines blazed and hashtags trended across the globe, Denzel Washington was doing something entirely different. He was packing a bag. Not for a role. Not for a red carpet. This time for something unspoken. Something sacred. There were no publicists. No limo. Just one man folding a shirt into a worn backpack, his hands trembling slightly as if he could already feel the weight of what was coming. He booked the first flight to Ouagadougou. As the plane climbed into the clouds, Denzel pressed his forehead against the window. The stars blinked above the Sahara like silent witnesses. "I don't know what I'm walking into," he whispered, "but I know I have to go." Thousands of miles away in the heart of Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré stood at the palace window, his gaze fixed far beyond the city skyline toward the landing strip just visible in the haze. "Should we alert the press?" one of his aides asked. Ibrahim didn't even turn. No cameras. No speeches. Just truth. And truth was coming. Neither man knew that within 48 hours they'd be crying again, this time side by side. When the plane touched down, there was no chaos. No media frenzy. Just quiet. A black SUV idled on the tarmac. A lone figure stood beside it, dressed in simple cotton, no fanfare, no medals. It was him. Ibrahim. Denzel stepped off the stairs slowly, the dry heat brushing against his face like a whisper. Their eyes met. And for a moment, time fell away. No Hollywood. No politics. Just two men soul to soul. They walked toward each other. No words. Just a fierce, silent embrace, like brothers reunited in another life. "I'm honored you came," Ibrahim said quietly. Denzel nodded. "I didn't come as a star. I came as a brother." They drove. Through narrow roads dusted with red earth. Past street vendors and laughing children who chased tires with sticks. Neighborhoods that pulsed with rhythm, life, and survival. No one knew who was inside the car. And somehow that made it more real. They arrived at a humble home, sun-baked walls, a roof of tin, windows with faded curtains swaying in the breeze. "This was my home," Ibrahim said, stepping out. He pushed open the door. No guards. No velvet ropes. Just silence and the weight of memory. Inside were old photographs, a woven prayer mat, a shelf of second-hand books, and on the table a single bowl of peanuts. Then Ibrahim reached into a drawer and pulled out a photo, weathered, soft at the edges. A little boy held the hand of an older woman, eyes shining like moonlight on water. "She raised me," he said, "while my parents worked day and night. She told me stories, fed me with her hands, gave me her strength." His voice faltered. "And she's still alive." Denzel stared at the picture. The woman's face, so familiar, so full of warmth, tugged something deep in his chest. "Where is she now?" he asked. Ibrahim exhaled. "She's still working, cleaning classrooms. In a rural school. Still on her feet." Denzel turned sharply. "At 85? She said, God gave me legs. I'll use them until he takes them." They drove for over an hour, the landscape unfolding into golden plains and scattered baobabs. When they arrived, the school was modest. Cracks in the walls. Dust in the air. But life, so much life. Children chasing each other, drawing spirals in the dirt, shrieking with joy. Then she appeared. Anthony Puel. Bent slightly at the waist, a broom in her hands, her steps slow but sure. Her head wrapped in a faded scarf, her eyes bright despite time's toll. Denzel stepped out of the car and froze. Ibrahim ran to her. "Amahawa," he whispered. She looked up. Her lips parted. Her hands dropped the broom. "Ibrahim," she breathed. They embraced, not like politician and caretaker, but like child and mother, separated by years but never by heart. Their shoulders shook as they wept. Then she saw him. Denzel. She stepped back, blinking as if conjuring a ghost. You're him," she gasped, her hand trembling as it touched his face. For one blinding moment, it felt like the earth held its breath. A courtyard in Burkina Faso. 3 people. 3 stories. And something bigger than all of them swirling in the space between. Later, they sat beneath an ancient baobab tree, Denzel, Traoré, and Anthony Puel. The shade wrapped around them like a blessing. She spoke of young Ibrahim, how he'd cry when the nights were cold, how he once gave her the only mango he had so she wouldn't go hungry. Denzel listened, his eyes wet, heart cracked wide open. Then she reached into the pocket of her faded apron. "I kept this," she said, pulling out a yellowed slip of paper. "A child's handwriting. One day I will be a leader and I will find you, Mama. I promise." Ibrahim gasped. He stared at the note like it was a relic from a dream. "I wrote that when I was 9, he whispered, after she gave me her last piece of bread." Denzel wiped his cheek. She held on to hope. That's the rarest kind of strength. Suddenly a shout cut the silence. A boy, barefoot and laughing, darted toward them holding a cracked plastic ball. "Mama, come play." And she did. 85 years old, broom still in hand, smile still radiant. She chased the boy across the dust like time hadn't touched her. Denzel watched, and something inside him broke and bloomed. He wasn't visiting anymore. He had found something holy. That night, as the stars blinked awake again, Denzel and Ibrahim returned to the palace. No music, no conversation, just the sound of thoughts louder than words. Until, at last, President Traoré stood. "There's something I want you to see," Traoré said, his voice lower now. "No one outside my family has ever been allowed in." He led Denzel down a side corridor deep within the palace. No portraits, no guards, just bare stone walls echoing with footsteps and silence. At the end stood a weathered wooden door. It looked older than the palace itself. Traoré pulled out a key, turned it slowly. Click. The door creaked open into a small, dim room, lit by a single bulb, the air heavy with memory. On every surface, stacks of worn books, faded journals, curled maps. But what caught Denzel's eye was a large, framed photograph on the far wall. A laughing boy, young Ibrahim, and the woman who shaped him. Anthony Puel. "This," Traoré said softly, "is my real vault. The only kind that matters." He crossed to a shelf, retrieved a frayed notebook, and opened it. Inside, careful handwriting. Visionary dreams. Early sketches of what he wanted for his country scratched out in ink and idealism. All of this, he said, flipping the pages, began with her. "She told me I mattered, even when nothing around me did." Denzel, visibly moved, ran his hand across the yellowed paper. "You lead," he said, like someone who never forgot where they came from. Traoré looked up, his eyes burning with quiet intensity. "Leadership isn't glory. It's gratitude." For a moment, they just stood there. Two men. No titles. No borders. Just one shared reverence for a woman whose strength shaped history. And that's when Denzel had the idea. Sudden, simple, and powerful. At sunrise, Denzel sat on the palace balcony watching Ouagadougou bathe in golden light. But he didn't see the skyline. He saw her sweeping a schoolyard, smiling despite the weight of years, giving without ever asking for anything in return. Traoré joined him. They didn't speak at first. Then Denzel turned to him. "She deserves more than a memory." A pause. Then a quiet smile from the president. "I've been waiting for someone to say that." That afternoon, without a press release, they returned to the school. No stage, no microphones, just a small group of staff and students gathered outside. Anthony Puel emerged from the building, squinting in confusion. "What's all this?" She asked it like someone who's lived long enough to expect nothing. Then, something she'd never imagined happened. President Traoré, the boy she once fed and bathed, slowly dropped to one knee in front of her. He held out a small velvet box. Inside, a gold medallion etched with her name and the national seal. "This," he said, voice trembling, "is for your life of service as a mother, a teacher, and a keeper of hope." Applause burst from the children. Teachers wiped away tears. Denzel stepped forward, an envelope in his hand, emotion choking his voice. "I made a call this morning. To my producer. We're telling your story on the big screen. And every dollar it earns goes to building schools in your name." Anthony Puel's hands flew to her face. And then she collapsed to her knees, overcome. She had spent a lifetime giving to others. And now, the world finally was giving something back. But the final, most unexpected moment was still to come. 3 days later, Denzel was back in Los Angeles. Back in the land of spotlights, laughter, and makeup rooms. He walked onto one of the country's biggest late-night talk shows, greeted with roaring applause. But he wasn't the same man. His smile was softer. His presence heavier. Halfway through the show, as the host launched into a scripted question, Denzel leaned forward. "Would you mind if I took a call?" The host blinked. "On air." Denzel nodded. A murmur swept through the audience. The crew scrambled behind the scenes. Moments later, the screen behind him came to life. There he was, President Traoré, live from Ouagadougou. The crowd fell absolutely still. Mr. Washington, Traoré said, warm and grounded, your visit reminded us of something simple, that kindness speaks all languages. He turned to the side and the camera followed. Anthony Puel appeared beside him, phone in hand, eyes gleaming with unshed tears. A wave of astonishment rolled through the studio. Denzel's jaw trembled. He pressed his hand to his mouth. You didn't just visit my country, Traoré said. You listened. And because of that, we honor the woman who taught us all how to serve. Then Mama Hawa, in slow, careful English, whispered, Thank you, my son. Denzel lowered his head and wept. Live, on national television. And so did the world. The moment exploded online. Hashtag Anthony Hawa. Hashtag the mother of Burkina. Hashtag Denzel listens. People everywhere began sharing their stories of grandmothers, teachers, women who made them who they are. One photo, Ibrahim embracing Anthony Puel in her modest kitchen, became an emblem of grace. News anchors dropped political segments to play the clip. CNN called it the most human moment of the decade. And then something remarkable began. Donations. Not for the movie. Not for Denzel. But for her. It started with a whisper. A village student, moved beyond words, quietly created a GoFundMe page. No marketing. No campaign. Just a title. For Mama Hawa. The goal? $10,000, enough to repair the leaky roof, buy food for the students, maybe fix the broken chalkboards. It passed $1 million in under 2 hours. People didn't just watch the story unfold, they entered it. In a divided world where headlines often split us apart, this story of a humble mother, a leader's childhood, and an actor's tears did the opposite. It brought people together. But as the world leaned in, one woman began to fade. Mama Hawa's body was growing tired. By day 6, her strength was flickering. She'd been smiling, laughing, holding hands with presidents and schoolchildren alike. But now even her breath seemed to carry the weight of goodbye. She asked for a private moment, just one, with Ibrahim and Denzel. No cameras. No attention. Just the truth. They came to her small clay home, a room bathed in soft afternoon light. On the floor, a woven mat, a folded prayer cloth, the faint smell of lavender oil. She was sitting upright, wrapped in a patterned scarf, her eyes clear, as if time had granted her one final moment of clarity. I'm an old woman, she said with a tired smile. And I won't see another harvest. Both men shook their heads, voices low, begging her to rest, to hold on. She reached out, gently touched Ibrahim's cheek. No tears, my boy. I'm not afraid. But I have one wish. She turned to Denzel, who knelt beside her. Make sure no child in this country ever learns on an empty stomach. Her voice was thin but steady, the voice of a woman used to being heard. Tears slipped down Traoré's face. Then she reached under her pillow, pulling out a small, worn cloth frayed at the corners, patched with careful stitches. Remember this? She asked Ibrahim. He gasped. It was the strip of cloth he once tied around her arm as a child when he played pretend president. My first honor, she said, placing it gently in his hands. My greatest title. And then, barely above a whisper. Take care of each other. They held her until the very end. No royal ceremony. No farewell parade. Just the rising sun and her spirit leaving with it. Traoré stood in stunned silence, the cloth still in his hands, as if afraid letting go would mean losing her completely. She gave me everything, he whispered, when I had nothing but dirt under my feet. Denzel was kneeling at the foot of the bed, head bowed, tears falling freely. We have to build something, he said. In her name. A place where children dream. Traoré looked up, nodded. A school. A garden. A legacy. Outside, a quiet crowd had already formed. They hadn't been summoned, they just knew. When Traoré stepped out holding the scarf, he didn't need to explain. Mama has returned to the ancestors, he told them. But her spirit will raise generations to come. People wept openly. Children clung to each other. Elders fell to their knees. The news spread across continents in hours. Burkina Faso declared a national day of mourning. At a press conference that evening, President Traoré's voice trembled as he made a promise to his nation. Every child will grow up knowing her name. Denzel canceled every scheduled appearance, no interviews, no red carpets, no premieres. I've played warriors and kings, he told a reporter outside the airport. But today I serve a mother. And there's no greater role. The following morning, the village rose before dawn. A simple pine casket rested in the square, draped with hand-woven cloth. No gold, no red carpet. Only fresh flowers, soft drums, and the silence of reverence. Traoré walked behind the casket alone, barefoot, the scarf cradled in his hands like a relic. Denzel followed, his face unshaven, suit wrinkled, exhaustion written across him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Condolences poured in from around the world leaders, artists, spiritual figures. But the moment that broke hearts came quietly. A small boy from Niger arrived at the village edge. He had walked 2 days barefoot just to hand someone a folded letter. In shaky handwriting, it read, "Thank you for raising our president." When the casket was lowered into the soil, the children sang, a hymn passed down through generations. Some cried softly. Others wailed openly. A white bird landed near the grave and stayed there, unmoving as if keeping watch. Then Denzel stepped forward. From his jacket, he pulled a silver chain, simple, aged, loved. "It was my father's," he said quietly. "She reminded me of him." Quiet strength. No applause. Just love. He laid the chain on the casket and whispered, "Goodbye, Mama." Even the film crews put down their cameras. Some moments, the real ones, don't belong to screens. That night, under a sky scattered with stars, Denzel and Traoré sat cross-legged on a straw mat outside the home where it had all started. The fire flickered between them. No words were exchanged at first. The silence was enough. Then Ibrahim broke it. "This week, I remembered who I am." Denzel looked up, voice rough but steady. "So did I." And there, between two men forever changed by one woman's grace, a promise was born. Not in law, not in ink, but in memory, in grief, and in the kind of love that reshapes nations. After the burial, something extraordinary happened, not with headlines, but with quiet intention. A blueprint began to take shape. Plans were drawn for the Mama Hawa Foundation, a collaboration between President Ibrahim Traoré and Denzel Washington. Its mission, to nourish, educate, and heal children in the rural corners of Burkina Faso and eventually far beyond. But Denzel didn't just endorse it with his name. He pledged an entire year's earnings from his next film to bring it to life. Still, the most powerful gesture didn't involve money at all. It was a short video, 1 minute, no polish, filmed on a phone as Denzel stood barefoot in the courtyard of her village. He looked straight into the camera, voice stripped of all performance. "If one woman, in one dusty village, can raise a president and reach a man like me, then what are you waiting for?" The world held its breath. Over 100 million people watched it in a single day. 3 days later, Denzel returned to the States. Quietly. No interviews. No entourage. But a major live TV appearance scheduled months ago couldn't be avoided. The producers insisted. The network had already promoted it across every channel. Denzel agreed, but with one condition. No cue cards. No questions. Just let me speak how I need to. The studio lights burned bright that evening. The crowd buzzed. Everyone expected charm, jokes, movie talk. The host leaned in casually. "You've traveled the globe, played legends. But what's the one moment that changed your soul?" Denzel didn't respond right away. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small and familiar, the faded scarf. He held it in his lap, eyes lowered. Then he raised the mic. "Ibrahim Traoré called me from Africa. I couldn't even speak. Because what he reminded me of wasn't fame, it was truth. That greatness isn't in trophies or titles. It's in the hands that fed you. And the leaders who never forget them." The host, visibly thrown off, asked gently, "What exactly did he say?" Denzel said nothing. He tapped his phone, held it to the mic, and played a voice message. President Traoré's voice filled the silent studio. "Thank you for honoring a woman the world ignored, who made a man the world would remember." And right there on live television, Denzel's voice cracked. He bowed his head and wept. That moment? It ignited the internet. Television hosts stopped mid-script. People at dinner tables turned up the volume. Journalists paused their stories to replay the scene. The image of Denzel clutching a scarf and crying as the voice of a young African president played became the defining visual of the year. Comments flooded in. "I've never cried for someone I didn't know. Calling my grandmother right now. Who is Ibrahim Traoré? We need leaders with his heart." Across the continent, a ripple effect began. In village after village, stories of quiet, uncelebrated mothers emerged. Teachers, farmers, midwives, guardians of generations. In the U.S., thousands gathered in candlelight vigils, lighting flames in honor of a woman they'd never met. But back in Burkina Faso, the response was even more surprising. Children began writing letters. Not to Santa, not to influencers, to the president. One wrote, "If I learn as hard as you did, will my mother be proud too?" Denzel disappeared from the spotlight for a day. Then, early the next morning, he posted a single photo on Instagram. A lone baobab tree standing in the red soil of West Africa. No filters. No tags. The caption read, "She watered roots that now hold up nations." Nothing more. And the world quietly wept. Exactly 1 week after that unexpected call on the late-night show in the heart of Ouagadougou, a statue was unveiled in stillness. There were no reporters, no announcement, just a small gathering of villagers, officials, and 2 men standing side by side. It was not a tribute to a general, not a president, not a star. It was a woman carved in bronze, her back straight, her hand holding that of a small boy beside her. On her arm, a simple cloth tied like a badge. Below it, a plaque read, "To Mama Hawa, the mother of all leaders." Traoré and Denzel stood before it, candles in hand, faces lit not by cameras, but by reverence. They didn't give a speech. Some moments don't need sound, only silence. That night, the breeze swept through the city like a lullaby, and villagers whispered that they could feel her again, the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing. In Los Angeles, Denzel made one final promise. He launched the Hawa Fund, a scholarship for young girls across Africa, built in partnership with the Burkina Faso government. Its mission, to uplift the forgotten and plant leaders in the very soil where she once swept school floors. Reporters clamored for a statement. Denzel said only this: "Some phone calls shift your schedule. This one shifted my soul."